So here we are. Hello, Marion. How are you today? Doing good?
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
I am fabulous, and it's my pleasure and honor to have you here with us on our podcast. And you completely represent what my podcast says, helping people to become the best version of themselves, right? The goodness we want is not out there somewhere. We have got all the talent, all the wisdom, all the confidence, you know, in there, getting back to it. So, tell us a bit more about your journey, Marion. Marion. Why is it that you do what you do? What was Marion like a little girl, and how did the life journey begin? Tell us a bit more about it.
Well, I'm the third of five children. And so when I was the youngest, the two above me are both girls. And I desperately wanted to play with them. And they were called the girls. So I wanted to be one of the girls.
Right.
But the age gap was 5 and 7 years. So I
Mm.
was really too young to join in their activities. And they were too young to spend time playing with me to accommodate my needs. So I was to them, I would think I was just a nuisance. and my memories of around always seem to come as I've done my own healing work. I've always come back to the age of 4. And I think it was around then that I must have really, started this real need to be with my sisters. And that little 4-year-old got shut up so many times, told either directly told or made to feel that she wasn't important. She was too small, too young. Nothing she was interested in was important, and she had nothing important to say. And that influenced me all the way through into my adulthood. That I struggled to yeah, I struggled to communicate anything that was important to me um, unless somebody actually asked me. If they said, "What's your opinion on this?" then I would become eloquent.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wasn't, but just for me to stand up and make a point on initiating that was very difficult for me. And then I, then in midlife, I was retrenched. And by that stage, I'd done some inner work. And I had actually been unhappy in that job for some time. Just I wasn't being stretched as a person. I knew that there was more to me, but I didn't know what that more was. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know what else I wanted to be doing. And um, yeah, so and on the day after I'd been told that I was retrenched, I went back to clear my desk and say goodbye to people. And as I walked up from the parking lot towards the building, I had this tumult of emotions going through me
Mm-hmm.
of, you know, mostly anxiety, but also a little bit of frustration and anger and a bit of guilt. Maybe I wasn't good enough and all of those feelings. And then suddenly there was this little spark of what I called gladness.
Mm-hmm.
And as I acknowledged it, it grew bigger. And I realized that for at least 2 years, I had been saying this job is killing my soul. And now I'd been paid to leave because with retrenchment, there came a payment package. And that changed everything. And I walked into that building with, holding my head high, a smile on my face. I had enough money to live until I decided what I wanted to do. So all that, the anxiety about the future was still there, but it was no longer that crushing weight, and all the other feelings went. All the frustration and anger and guilt was gone. I walked in there thinking, I've got what I wanted. I've got money to live. I've got time to find out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
What else? And I'm out of a job that I wasn't enjoying anymore.
True.
And that illustrated for me the power of mindset. At that stage, I had a hobby aromatherapy practice, which
Mm-hmm.
after exploring other options, I decided that I wanted to make that a full-time business. So that's the direction I went in.
Mm-hmm.
And that yeah, I learned a lot through that. But ultimately, I've come to the place where I started actually out as a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
wanting to help people improve their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've come now full circle back to where I started out as a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
um, doing some peer counseling. And I've come back now to coaching to help people and looking at my own life story, how I had so much more potential than what I experienced, what I allowed to show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sorry.
That's all right. No worries. Something is ringing. I'm not sure what, but
And
we'll.
it was my cell. I thought I'd put it off, but I turned the
All
sound
right.
off, but
No
not
worries.
sure why it's coming on my computer.
Brilliant.
Um, the yeah, so it was that mindset shift started me on a new journey
Mm-hmm.
of, which ultimately came back to firstly helping people through the more physical thing of aromatherapy, but there was always a talking aspect to it where people shared their issues with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then through craniosacral therapy, I learned about trauma and the effect it has on your mind and your body for years afterwards. Even when you think you've dealt with it, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And discovered my own trauma from my childhood. And then through exploring that, I've learned the skills to help other people. And that's now my passion, is to help people, for particularly women, because I think very often women are put into what I call the box of other people's expectations.
Very true.
And we grow up. And I mean, sometimes we believe the, because the conditioning starts so early, we believe that the things we want are really our own desires. But when you get to sort of later in life and you got that nagging feeling that there's something missing, that's when you discover, actually, I had a dream of my own that's
Yes.
different to this.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marion, with us. I mean, that's amazing. So there's so many turning points and learning points in the journey. So here you are, you know, going out of the job that you don't like, and immediately the fear response came in. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But then as soon as you took a step back, you're like, this is my space. This is where I've got the money, the time to explore what I really want. And as you rightly said, it was this soul sucking job. You're like, there's something inside you that's constantly telling, no, this is not what I want. And that's when I say, your dreams don't give up on you. It's like that nagging feeling. I know you've got this. I know you can do more. And I think you're like, no, I'm fine. It's like it's difficult to believe I can be more, but that nudge inside which knows you are more does not give up on you. So
Mhm.
first of all, many congratulations to hearing, listening to that nudge and going forward with it. Tell us a bit more about, so you said you started from aromatherapy, then you learned more, practice more about craniosacral therapy. Would you agree that your own healing journey always made you a better therapist, a better healer to be able to help other
Oh,
people?
yes. Oh, yes. And learning about trauma in the craniosacral therapy was unbelievable for me,
Mm-hmm.
because nothing bad happened to me as a child. When you look at it from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
we were a normal kind of a family, normal kind of family dynamics. Nothing's perfect, but it was, the kind of good enough family stuff that
Mm-hmm.
happens. And I really didn't experience any of the sort of those big childhood traumas.
Mm-hmm.
But a part of my journey, when I was getting interested in trauma, I came across a thing called childhood emotional neglect,
Hmm.
which is where, for what it's not abuse in the sense that it's done deliberately or viciously, or it's just that for whatever reason your emotional needs are not met by your caregivers.
Mm-hmm. Quite right.
And that leaves a gap in your life. It also influences your development as a child
Mm-hmm.
and I came across this website and it had a checklist on it, and nobody can resist a checklist. So
Hmm.
I went through it, And I got to the end of the page and realized I had ticked every box.
Okay.
And it was quite a shock to me. And I suddenly thought, oh, that
Mhm.
explains a lot. And what happened then, and then over the next little while, there were times when I was struggling to do something. And I'd suddenly realize, oh, this is not me. This is a symptom of what I call CEN.
Mhm. Right. And just to
And
clarify.
that enabled me to step back from it and say, okay, so I'm struggling to do this, not because I'm incapable or there's a I've lack ability.
Mhm.
It's that this isn't because of my childhood experience, I'm now struggling with this. And it kind of put it in a box with
Mhm.
a label on it,
Mhm.
and it was separate from me as a person. And
Mhm.
that enabled me then and very often I could then take the action without a problem. It was
Brilliant.
very interesting. As soon as I disassociated it stopped being an emotional thing about me. I can't do this because I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
I can't do this because my childhood development was such that I struggle with these kind of actions, decisions.
Mhm.
Then it disappeared.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
um, and yeah, and the techniques that I learned. I mean, I swapped sessions with a fellow craniosacral therapist for about 2 years, I think. That was life changing
Mhm.
because it released a lot of the stored anxiety, stress, trauma in my body.
Mhm.
And then, and I had also discovered emotional freedom techniques. And um, I didn't use it a lot in the beginning. And
Mhm.
I realize now it's because it's very hard to be practitioner and client at the same time. And then after I'd done a later training, an additional training course,
Mhm.
I had set up a swap system with one of the
Mhm.
other practitioners.
Mhm.
And so and for the first few months, we swapped every week to build up our skills levels. And I should sorted out so much stuff in those few months. And
Mhm.
that's when I realized the difference between working with a practitioner and doing your own work. So emotional freedom techniques is great for personal work on what I call first aid level,
Mhm.
containing your emotional reactions to things. But if you want to get to the root of it and really sort that out so it no longer becomes an issue,
Mhm.
you need to work with a practitioner. It's really not easy to do that on your own, even with the training.
Yeah. I think with the training, would you agree that sometimes if you're trying to work on yourself, you might come in your own way? So that becomes difficult. You know the techniques, but it's like you're still standing in there. Right, that's brilliant. Tell us a bit more about craniosacral therapy. What does it do, and how has it helped you? You said, it helped you tap into a lot of trauma, get rid of a lot of stored emotions. Um, how does it work? How did it help you?
When you have a strong emotional reaction to something,
Mm-hmm.
and trauma is obviously a very strong reaction to an issue, your body holds that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about some time when you were really, really angry, you felt that in your whole body seemed to be angry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that happens with fear, anxiety, um, grief,
Mm-hmm.
disappointment, all the range of emotions. As soon as they are intense, they're likely to get stored in the body, particularly if they're at a certain level that the body feels that you're under some form of threat. Then your nervous system kicks in, and your brain will remember that
Mm-hmm.
situation and all the things that it associates with it, so that in future, if any one of those things, like little tick boxes, connected with that issue, could
Mm-hmm.
be a color, a smell, a sound,
Mm-hmm.
something that your conscious mind knows is not related to a past event,
Mm-hmm.
but it can trigger something in your nervous system, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not always even conscious of the trigger of what has triggered you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you've got a strong aversion to a color,
Mm-hmm.
not just I don't like the color, but it actually makes you feel uncomfortable. There's probably something that happened in your past
mm,
that may not seem like a big issue to you now, if you could ever even remember it,
mhm,
but your brain is saying to you
mhm,
that kind of is a reminder of something that unpleasant or horrible or potentially dangerous that happened.
mhm.
And I've got it tick boxed as do not go there again.
Right. You know, the brain really wants to keep you safe. And so
Yeah.
therefore, from previous memories, previous experiences, it wants to make sure, no, this is not safe, this is not safe, this is not safe. Thank you for sharing about your childhood as well. I mean, nobody has a perfect childhood, what we would say. And with no offense to any caregiver, possibly most caregivers try to do their very best. But unfortunately, they have their own traumas that were not dealt with. And they are not even aware at times how to look after your emotional needs, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I always think back to those 5 love languages.
Yes.
And as adults, we can be aware of the fact, okay, I like being told that you
Mm,
care for me, and you like receiving gifts.
mm,
So I keep wanting, you keep giving me gifts, but I want you to say you love me. And I keep
mm,
telling you I love you, and
and
you want me to give you gifts. And so we don't connect.
no.
And I think of that and I think, well, that's the same sort of thing in childhood.
Mm,
If I want to be cuddled, and my mother is frenetically busy as she was running a household, if
mm.
by the time I was 4, there would have been, yeah, there were 4 generations.
Okay.
Um, and at that stage, there were four kids. By the time I was 6, there were 5 kids
Yeah.
and 4 adults
Mm,
over that over 4 generations.
right.
She had a full-time job running the household. Never mind giving each child their own
Mm,
emotional support.
true. True. Very true. So I'm pretty sure she did her very best, but then she could only
Hmm,
do what she could, isn't it? She did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Would
And
would you?
I take responsibility for that too, because I didn't speak up.
Mm,
And yes, I know it's a small child, but um, she actually says, like, that sister above me,
mm,
when she felt left out, would cry and carry on, and my father would feel sorry, and then she would be taken on whatever outing that she was actually not.
mm,
She was considered too young for,
mm,
but she would get included
mm,
because she put up a performance. So
mm.
she knew what to do. But
But
my elder sister and I had different personalities,
Marion,
and
but
he
would
didn't.
would you agree that this is where extroversion and introversion comes into play? We are
Oh
all,
yeah.
yeah, because I myself, I mean, nobody is a complete introvert or extrovert. We are almost everybody's an ambivert, but everybody has a predominance. And I was a very introverted child, and I would quite empathize with that. Like, you don't want to be a nuisance for somebody, you don't want to create trouble for your parents, so you want it, but it's like, oh no, so yeah, I think every child is so different. Like, you also want the same thing, but maybe you're just different natured. And I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest issue with introverts. And even in this day and age, when it comes to visibility, we, like, my idea of a confident speaker was somebody really, like,
Mhm.
bashful on the stage and loud, and introverts are unlikely to be that way, and you can still have quiet confidence and convey what you have. So tell us a bit more about that. I think what I really found intriguing was when you say that you actually help introverted women. So would that be influenced by your own journey? Would you?
Yes,
Yeah.
because I know what a struggle it is to make yourself visible, and that without that,
Mm,
particularly in an online environment,
yes.
it's not enough just to be writing stuff
Mm,
that people enjoy.
mm,
They really want to know who they're signing up with. And there's that saying, people buy from people, and that they buy from people that they like, know, and trust. And the sort of most effective way of people getting to know you is through video. And yet, as introverts, most of us
mm,
are very uncomfortable on video.
mhm,
I was so bad that I wouldn't even do a video call with my own family. I would insist on audio
Right.
only. And that's, yeah. So then I went on a presentation skills course because interestingly, I enjoyed live presentations, and
Mhm.
I used to teach shiatsu, and I loved that sense. But it was always where I was in front of a very small group of people rather than on a stage.
Mhm.
And then I did a presentation skills course,
Mhm.
which was phenomenal because it included emotional freedom techniques and things. So we actually dealt with the emotional issues that were blocking us,
Mhm.
not just getting the how to do skills.
Sure. Sure.
And that was life changing. And there were two parts to that. The second part was actually done online. First one was live, the next was online. I had to get comfortable on camera because that
Mhm.
was the only way to do this course that I signed up for.
Right.
And part of that was also then running workshops.
Mhm.
And so once I got into it, I loved it.
There you go. That's where I was coming to. It's like you did not get it out there. The course did not get it for you. It was just like it was behind all this discomfort and conditioning. I need to be small, which possibly came from the childhood emotional neglect that you mentioned. But when you opened the cage of that, when you came out of your comfort zone, the magic happens at the end of your comfort zone. And the course did not give it to you. It was already there, but it opened doors for you to get
Yes, I
magic.
did the course because I wanted to be able to do presentations, and knew I enjoyed that teaching, presenting space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't actually realize that there was going to be an online part of it, and the live section was challenging enough
Mm-hmm.
because having to be critiqued was another issue in
Right.
my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that was also amazing because we were told there were two ways we could give feedback to each other. Feedback was obligatory in the little breakout rooms that we did for practice,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to say, "I like that because of do more of it,"
Mm-hmm.
or um, "Would you consider doing this bit differently?" Because would you consider speaking more loudly so that I could hear you better?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that format of
It
feedback.
was well, it made it much easier to get through the feedback sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and but it was a very intense
Mm-hmm.
experience for me.
Right.
And shortly after that, I did a talk at a networking group. They didn't manage their time well, and from being told I had an hour, I ended up with like half an hour.
Right.
And I was so keyed up, I couldn't in the moment think how to abbreviate my course, my talk.
Right.
So I just started and just came to an abrupt end when the time was up,
Right.
and got into my car afterwards, and I could feel my body bracing for that little voice that was going to tell me all the stuff I'd done wrong. And
Hmm.
instead it said to me, how would you do that differently next time?
Awesome. Awesome.
That trainer got a bucket load. In fact, he got a whole room of bucket loads of appreciation and gratitude, because I realized then that my inner critic had been retrained. And
Yes.
that's now also part of the work that I do. Every course I run
Mm-hmm.
includes how to retrain your inner critic to
Mm-hmm.
be a supportive voice. It makes a world of difference.
Right. Now that's so important because you can stop talking to anyone, but this you cannot run away from. And as you rightly said, as soon as you went in, normally, trauma, childhood emotional neglect, my unhealed self would be like, that's it, Ruchi. You did this, and this wrong. But here, the inner voice was retrained. You're like, oh, okay, how could you have done differently? And that's it. There is no judgment, there's no critiquing, there's no going down that rabbit hole of despair and I am not good enough. So no, that's
And there's
amazing.
an assumption there will be another time. You know,
Exactly. Exactly.
it is kind of hope.
Right, right.
It was one of the most phenomenal experiences for
Yeah,
me.
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that because, in the talks I do, I always keep reiterating the importance of your inner voice. And that's so important, like, especially how we talk to ourselves. Generally, in your early childhood, how you are talked to by your caregivers,
Mhm.
knowingly, unknowingly, and sometimes it's not even an incident. As you said, there was no major trauma, but how the child interprets the situation and what meaning they make out of it, that in the long term becomes your inner voice. And it's not a life statement, as you rightly said, we can always retrain it. We can always retrain it, right? So, Marion, you mentioned about using emotional freedom technique to be able to help ourselves. So, would you recommend that our viewers can actually learn emotional freedom technique to train themselves? And what can emotional freedom technique help with? What emotional issues it can help with?
It helps with almost everything. It, and it sounds too good to be true, but there
Mhm.
is an emotional component to all our reactions, even to chronic pain.
Of course, yeah.
Um, and I have a theory that, and with you will know it's your from your medical training, that pain, chronic pain, the pain message travels on one particular neural pathway, and
Mhm.
if you can disrupt that pathway, the perceived level of pain will reduce.
Yeah, yes.
And I have a theory that the same happens with negative thinking,
Mm-hmm.
that we keep telling ourselves the same negative, I'm not good enough, kind of whatever, however you word it, but you get that same message all the time. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this well enough. I'm
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And that you create a particular neural pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you can interrupt that,
Mm-hmm.
you can change the message. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what emotional freedom techniques does. The research shows that it actually, when you're agitated, your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fight or flight, is highly active.
Mm-hmm.
Tapping on the particular points that we use in emotional freedom techniques has been shown to calm the amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
So you reduce your normal emotional response to
Mm-hmm.
that thought or event or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that trigger is.
Mm-hmm.
And and then once that emotional reaction is reduced,
Mm-hmm.
you can then introduce a reframe,
Mm-hmm.
looking at it from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and you create a new neural pathway that so that when I like pictures, so I use a doorbell image. You push the button, the trigger, and the
Mm-hmm.
alarm goes off. Now, instead of trying to calm down the alarm or teach the person to push through the alarm signals and just keep going anyway, emotional freedom techniques cuts the wire.
Mm-hmm.
So you no longer have that same response. Or there's no, there's no, you don't trigger
Interesting.
neural. Well, that's what happened with my experience in that after that course. I had
Mm-hmm.
created a new neural pathway that when I didn't do something well, instead of criticizing myself, I now had a new message that said, do this, how would you do this differently?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So so that's how EFT works. It creates new neural pathways around old issues. So you no longer have the old response to it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for
But
sharing.
again, that's for self-help. There's loads of videos on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. Brad Yates is a very good practitioner to follow. He's got videos on virtually anything you can think of ever needing to tap on. And but those are what I call first aid. They will help you to contain and to reduce your emotional response to situations. And
Mm-hmm.
as I said earlier, if you really want to get to the root cause,
Mm-hmm.
work with a practitioner, because it's really hard to be both practice yeah
Of course.
practitioner and client in the same at the same time.
Right.
um,
Sure, sure. So if someone, thank you so much for sharing that, Marion. And if somebody was suffering with, let's say, they're feeling really low, so anxiety, depression, constant overthinking, or procrastination, Do you think that if they were looking to work with you on either of these issues, would they be able to find emotional freedom technique helpful to
Oh,
resolve
yes.
issues? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And for how many set, of course, it varies from person to person, but on an average, say somebody has, let's take a person X who has severe anger management issues. Like they have been struggling with it, they've been meditating, working, healing. So they've done some sort of inner work. That's one. Or maybe somebody else who hasn't. All they want is to be able to, they have been told, you overreact. They have aversion to this word overreact. What would be the best way forward for them? What would you recommend?
I say to people, start with 4 sessions because on one issue, you can make significant progress.
Mm-hmm.
May not complete the work, but after 4 sessions, you can see that you have made progress. Because
Mm-hmm.
nothing, no technique is right for everybody. So
Of
there are some people who just don't get EFT.
course. Yeah.
So 4 sessions they can see whether this is what they want to continue working with. They can see whether that's actually making an impact for them.
Brilliant.
A lot of my clients sign up for another 4 sessions because if it's a deep issue, 4 sessions isn't always enough because it's not just when it's a deep issue. There's often also
Yes, totally.
other what we call other aspects to it. One would be like fear of flying. You're actually afraid of the actually getting on the airplane, leaving the ground,
Mm-hmm.
or you could also be claustrophobic, or you could be afraid of if there's a crash that you will die, or you could be fine with you don't mind dying, but it's going to have an emotional and financial and whatever impact on your family, and that could be causing you anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a thing around being in control,
Mm-hmm.
and that when you're driving your car, you're in control. You're sitting in the airplane, you're not in control.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else is driving this thing.
Right.
And that creates anxiety. So there's a whole host of issues
Mm-hmm.
that could come under that one umbrella called fear of flying.
Sure.
And you could deal with one that you think
Mm-hmm.
is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go and get on an airplane and you're still feeling anxious and you think, gee, that didn't work. But actually, there's a secondary issue that you didn't deal with. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's one session. For some things can clear up. But the other thing is that to recreate, when you've had an emotional pattern that's become entrenched,
Mm-hmm.
that neural pathway is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And to change it to a new one,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a habit. You don't change a habit by doing something differently once.
Mm-hmm. You have to keep
You
doing
have to practice it. So
it.
the other thing is to actually keep reaffirming that shift so
Mm-hmm.
that you strengthen the new neural pathway. And that's another reason why. And that's why one of the advantages of EFT, because you can do it on your own in between sessions, you can keep reaffirming that new neural pathway and strengthening it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to just wait for the next week then when you see your practitioner.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, that's amazing. That's really, really insightful and very interesting. You also, right. So just to tell everyone, I connected with Marion on LinkedIn. We had this amazing, insightful call. Very, very amazing, knowledgeable, awesome practitioner. Um, Marion also shared with me matrix imprinting. Could you tell me a bit more about what
Okay,
it
that's
is?
um, probably most easily described as an advanced version of emotional freedom techniques.
Okay.
You can use it. It incorporates emotional freedom techniques. So the training requires you to be an EFT trained to practitioner level with emotional freedom techniques to
Mm-hmm.
then train in matrix reimprinting.
Mm-hmm.
And it uses a lot of visualization.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the psychological term, but and where you undergo trauma, part of your personality splits off. And in matrix re-imprinting, that's called an echo.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do, we use visualization techniques to speak with your echo or echoes, because there's often more than one.
Yeah.
Um, but we deal with them one at a time, and to actually visualize yourself connecting and communicating with that echo as if it's a separate entity from you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, you don't identify with it. So you don't go back into the experience and the emotions of that echo. You
Mm-hmm.
talk to it as if it's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And you meet the emotional needs of that echo,
Mm-hmm.
either yourself, or you're visualizing yourself doing it, or you bring in imaginary people to, it's like creating a movie. and, and
Ma'am, I had a question. So when you say in the matrix imprinting, you get people to fulfill the unmet needs,
Mhm.
would it be okay to consider yourself as your own loving parent to meet those
Yes,
needs?
yes.
So that,
That is what usually happens. But
right.
there are some people who find that difficult for whatever reason. And
Okay.
then you can imagine them bringing in, either imagine their parent coming in, or if their parent wasn't a loving caregiver, a grandparent or a mentor, or even an imaginary person, a superhero that you admired as a kid. Or in fact, I had one client where we imagined there was a couple down the road
Mm-hmm.
who didn't have kids and
Mm-hmm.
who took an interest in him. And there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of trauma stuff happening in emotional issues in his family. And he used to go and visit these people. So
Mm-hmm.
we imagined that he actually moved in with them and they
Oh,
cared for him, because he couldn't get any, even on an imaginary level, he couldn't visualize care in his own home. He wanted new parents. So we said, fine. And he said, oh, there's this couple down the road. So he moved, in his imagination, he moved in there.
right, right. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, that's amazing. Marin, tell us maybe about a breakthrough that one of your clients had, or a client journey, any client story that you would want to share, where we can see for real, how things worked out, what happened.
Yeah. There's two, but the first one is quite somebody who I had posted about helping people go from self-doubt to self-confidence. And she contacted me about that. She
Mm-hmm.
is an estate agent in America. What do they call them? Realtors. And it was her dream job. She'd had other work, and then she'd had an opportunity to go into real estate. She'd always dreamed of being a sort of top real estate realtor. And so she got this job, but she couldn't get out of that selling sort of middle level properties. So
Mm-hmm.
she was making an adequate income, but it wasn't enough. And she was, a single mother, and there's, there were always financial issues. And so she was getting by, but it was a bit of a struggle, and it wasn't what she wanted. And during the 4 sessions that we had together,
Mm-hmm.
she was offered the opportunity to sell a waterfront property. The prices of waterfront properties are very high, and she was kind of, I don't know about anything about the waterfront, and I don't know this and that. And I think it was on the second session she sat and said, it's exactly the same process, only the price is different.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
And then she went for it. There was a whole lot of drama attached to it. Not of the sale, it was just the physical
Mm-hmm.
thing of the weather, and there was a storm, and anyway, it caused a lot of problems. In the process, she had to get help from neighbors, and um, the
This.
pandemic, and even got stuck in the garden. I mean, it was that level of stuff. And it was it was semi-rural area, and there was a guy down the road who had a tractor.
Was it something that she experienced as a child?
I,
You're saying no, or
I
no?
don't know. No, her self-doubt may have been. But what happened was that through all of this, she ended up being offered a second high-level property. So when she started with me, she had didn't have the confidence to
Mhm.
take on these high ticket houses. And so she was struggling. And through the EFT process, she ended up not only with one but two within
Brilliant.
that 4 week period.
Right, right. Would you agree that that journey from self-doubt to self-confidence, again, it was like overcoming that I am not enough to I am enough journey? Yeah. And once she's like, that breakthrough, oh, it is the same process. And then, so with EFT, she could dive deep. And was that so in the 4 sessions, would you feel that was it the first session that she found the breakthrough in, or did you have more layers to dig in to, get to the base of it?
For her, it the breakthrough came in that second session.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends.
It depends.
For her, it was the realization
Mm-hmm.
that her belief that she didn't know enough
Mm-hmm.
about those high ticket things would require more of her and more knowledge. And she
Mm-hmm.
suddenly realized that the actual sales process was the same, and she knew how to acquire the knowledge that she didn't have.
Mm. So that's
So
sorted. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that was a fairly simple one.
Mm.
Where the underlying issues are more complex, the breakthrough might take longer to settle. You might get the insight, but then you might still have to work through layers of emotional reinforcement of that old belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So would it be right in saying that you tend to use the EFT and matrix imprinting, like depending on how the client works out, how the sessions work out, what the need of the session
Yes,
is,
absolutely.
they work
Sometimes,
hand in hand.
sometimes it's just a straightforward coaching session,
Sure.
but whenever there's quite sort of a blockage to moving forward surfaces,
And
or
you
there's emotional resistance to doing something, then I use the EFT or the matrix, depending on what.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. It's been really, really, really insightful and amazing. Um, so what I want to ask is like,
Can I just tell you very quickly the other story,
yeah, yeah, sure.
which was somebody who came to me because she was a good ideas person.
Mm-hmm.
She'd given up her corporate job, working for herself. But she wasn't entirely happy with. She'd sort of picked on a skill that was marketable, and I was doing that, but it wasn't fulfilling her. But
Mm-hmm.
she had so many good ideas about what else she could do, but she didn't know which one to follow. And we worked through it, and we went through a process that I used to really discover what it is that is truly important to you, what I call your heart dream. We spoke earlier about the dreams that don't go away when you stop dreaming them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I use the image of it leaves, you don't think about it, so it's not in your brain, but you carry it in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And we identified that a completely different thing that a dream she had, but she didn't believe she could fulfill it because of the feedback she'd got from her father.
Mm-hmm.
And so she didn't even consider that idea,
Mm-hmm.
but that was what she really wanted to do.
Right. Would you share with us? I mean, again, this is so insightful because, as kids, we are told so many times, oh, this can't be, that can't happen, you can't do this. But, recently I'm a very visual person, and I think I wrote one of the posts, and what came to me is like, if you were to tie an elephant to a little pole, okay,
Mhm.
and that elephant is tied there for long enough, it will start believing that's all I can do. It doesn't believe that I can go away from the pole. I think that's what our limiting beliefs and ideas that we learn to live as. Whereas when you come out, and again, the same thing, it's not like somebody did it on purpose, but like, that's what they thought. When you come
They were trying to keep you safe.
exactly. And this is the visual that always comes to me. I think I saw it somewhere. We were in Pondicherry and I saw this elephant, that's what came to me. I'm like, what if this elephant knew that I could come off it? It's just a tiny pole. I think that's the power of belief, isn't it? Most of our limiting beliefs are like that. They have the hold on you, or like, the traumas, the repeated thinking patterns. Beliefs are basically repeated thoughts, right? And when you can retrain that inner voice, when you can create a new neural pathway, of course, you have to keep working on it. It's not going to become a habit by just doing it once. But yeah, no, that's spectacular. Could you tell us what that thing was? Obviously, we're not taking any names here, but what she was doing first, which was just an idea.
Okay, the job that she had set up for herself as this is a marketable skill
Mhm.
was copywriting.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, and then there were various other things she wanted to. She thought of. I don't remember them, but the heart dream that emerged
Mm-hmm.
was to open a vegan deli.
Mm. Interesting.
And she was already making vegan products for herself and family and friends.
That came from her heart, isn't it? That
Mhm.
was her skill that she wanted to do. But she's like, oh,
And but her father had been a pharmacist, and
um,
obviously had to have some entrepreneurial skills into that because he's running his own pharmacy.
mm,
And he had always said to her, don't be an entrepreneur, go into corporate. She'd gone into corporate, she'd burnt out, and
mm,
then she'd come out of it saying, I don't want to do that again. And so I said, she started off with copywriting.
right.
She was considering, I can't remember, there was about three other things. None of them were this vegan
No,
thing.
no. So she's like
And
up
yeah,
here in the head, like, contemplating this. But you
yeah.
let her move from up here to down here and dig deeper to what she really wanted. Like, I would love to share this question, which I think that lights me up, which is, what does success mean to you? No, like, a successful, meaningful, purposeful life, what does it look like and mean for you? Not your parents, not your family, not your colleagues, nobody else but you. I think with that we can actually try and make a move from here to here, because this is great, analysis is great, but then that leads to analysis paralysis. It's like, these are my options, that's it. No, I can't follow my heart. What if I fail? Well, if you fail, you get out. It's not.
Yeah, but also there's some people who don't even know what their heart dream is.
Yeah, because yeah, of course, yeah.
Because that and I can say as women, most women would enjoy having children, but there
Mm,
are some who actually don't want children.
totally.
But and I'm one of them.
Hmm.
And I kind of
People don't
assumed,
get
but
it.
I could kind of assume that I would,
Yeah,
but it wasn't what I wanted.
right, right, right. No, I totally get it.
And I think because of my emotional issues as a child,
Hmm.
in yeah, I think it all goes back to that. It
Yes.
not, but it and yet when I was in perimenopause,
Mm.
I had this biological clock in me saying, you've got to get into a relationship now because if you're not going to be able to have kids, it's very soon. You're not going to be able to have kids.
Right,
I'm thinking, but I never wanted them. Why?
right.
And this, and then talking with a friend who also didn't marry, didn't have kids. There's still a feeling about not having done something important, not being fully developed as a woman because we didn't marry and have kids, but neither of us wanted to.
I would
That
you
social patterning is still there.
exactly. I think that social conditioning is so strong over the generations that it's like, if you're a woman, you have a family, you have a husband, you marry, you have a child. I think that understanding you might have in yourself, but again, that conditioning is very strong. Like, oh, something's not right. Everybody has this. Am I not doing something right? But see, everybody is different. If you feel, no, this is the life I want, and I don't want to be a parent, or whatever the reasons are, it's a choice you make. And society is very judgmental about it. I mean, I've got one 3-year old, and you won't believe how many times I'm asked. Just yesterday in my workplace, one of my colleagues was like, oh, you've got a 3-year old. I'm like, yes. And are you thinking about the next one? I was like, no, I'm good. If I get this right, he's 3-year old and he's very naughty and I love him to bits. But I was like, if I get this right, and especially when you have the understanding of trauma, like, first 5 years are so crucial. Like, that's how the inner dialogue begins. And I was like, oh, maybe for now. And that's it. And, I'm like, No, not for now. That's my decision. And I'm talking to myself, do you know what goes into that? Like how many sleepless nights? How I mean every and yeah, I would just say any human being, man, woman, they have their own right, their own choice to decide whether or not they choose to have a partner, marry, not marry, have a child. That does not make you complete or not make you complete. That's just a stupid thing to think about. But yeah, that's just superficial.
But the social conditioning is very strong,
Very,
very strong.
very, very. And I think because it's been over the generations. Yeah. I had my son 3 years back, and my grandmother tells me, now you're a woman. I'm like, okay, right. Before that, possibly I wasn't. But then, yeah, stuff like that. Or another time, like, I don't see, pardon my, like, I'm not wanting to hurt anyone. She's in her late 80s, early 90s now. So, she was telling my cousin, she says, I don't understand. If people don't want to have kids, why do they get married? And we're just me and my cousin, we're looking at each other, and we bother not to answer because it would not make sense to her. And I think it's just generation gap. That's what was right. And yeah, that's
Yeah, because back in her day, she may not even have had a choice about who she married.
exactly. It's like, that choice did not exist. It's like,
Mhm,
it's almost as good as like, you eat, you sleep. It was as
mhm.
ingrained. So having a choice whether you marry, not marry, having a kid, that did not
Yeah,
exist.
and 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 some cultures you don't even have the choice of who you marry; they're chosen for you.
Yes, there are some cultures like that. You're quite right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I mean, I feel blessed that, like, we live in an age and time where we can make our own choices. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Marion. And I think just to go back, so we learned about what is emotional freedom technique, what is matrix imprinting, a little bit about the craniosacral techniques as well. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and how you came about it. And if right now any of our viewers who is listening to it and they feel, okay, that's all amazing, but I'm really struggling with visibility. It could be as simple as I'm good at my work, but I'm unable to showcase my presentation, and my other colleague gets the prize or the promotion because I can't. I know I've got the skill, but that fear of visibility. To somebody who is an entrepreneur who has got the skills, but they were possibly like, oh, I can't go in there. I'm going to be judged. What are people going to think? What would be a few suggestions, advice, or actionable steps that you would say they can take right now? Because the whole idea is, that when they listen to the podcast, they don't go and think, oh, wow, that was amazing. They did it. And then what? So, what can they do about it?
Well, I'll share the very first breakthrough I had was with doing a live presentation. I was doing a report to a group,
Mm-hmm.
and afterwards, somebody said to me, I don't know how you could stand up there and do that. And she was one of the people who always made tea. And I said to her, well, put me behind a tea table. And that's where I go into a blue funk. And she thought I was off the planet. But what that told me was that the people in front of me were not criticizing me. They were sitting there saying, thank God that's not me.
Right.
And I just decided there and then that it was 95% of the people in front of me were sitting there saying, thank God I don't have to stand up and talk.
Right.
And that made live presentations for me a
Yeah.
whole lot easier. I won't say I wasn't nervous when I started out, but I
Mm.
carried that thought in my head. These people are not criticizing me. They're actually amazed that I can do it because they can't.
Right, right, right. So it's a shift of mindset, isn't it?
Mm. And when you think that, there's studies, some study from way back when, but it said that most people
Mm-hmm.
fear public speaking more than death.
Exactly.
That's where I think where I came up with this figure, it's probably 95% of those people out there are
Mm.
terrified of
Of
public speaking.
of course, of course.
And the same thing goes for video,
Yes, yes.
that a lot of people are very nervous, anxious, even terrified of being on video. So if you can be on video, they're already in awe of,
Mhm.
oh, you can do that.
You can- And another thing, like, as an entrepreneur, I mean, if you have an online business, if yes, you can post and everything, but the thing is, building up the connection, the trust, they need to know the person behind the business, because people buy from people, right? To make
Yes.
that impact. Maybe recently, I mean, I would like to share a small story. I was working with a lady. She is out of it now, but she is trying to find her course in life. Where does she go, and how things work out for her. So she came out of a domestically abusive relationship. We went through visualization where, like, we visualized this lady who has been in domestic abusive relationship for 15 to 20 years. And so this lady that I was working with, she is struggling to put herself out there, to put the video, because, like, oh my god, what's people gonna think. I mean, not sharing her personal story, how she came out. We discussed into all of that. And then I was like, okay, just, this lady who is into this abusive relationship for 15 to 20 years, she's just been beaten up. She's curled up in a corner. She's just about to cut her hand because she's going to give up. That's it. That's her upper end, upper threshold. And at that point, just to numb her pain, she's scrolling through and she finds you on the screen speaking about your journey and how you came out of it. And I could see that lit up moment in a minute. Yes, there will might be other obstacles, but I think for me the biggest breakthrough to I was that person 3 years back. I would rather die than press play on the video button, because again, what would people think? And I don't have something valuable to offer. I'll be judged. But I think if you keep going with the intention that that video, if that reaches that one person who really needs to hear it, who that would be almost life transforming for them. That's it. That's your intention. And people who need to align with you will align, and people who don't will go their own way, because your authenticity is your superpower. I mean, if you say you're a therapist, I mean, there are thousands out there. If somebody wants to connect with you, you can't hide behind that label, right? You need to show who you are. And I think that's where video and getting yourself out there really, really is.
And that thing about authenticity, being yourself, is so true. Because I was, in fact, put off video because I saw so many people with,
Trying to be something.
perfect makeup, perfect clothing, perfect background, perfect talking. They didn't stumble over their words. They didn't
No,
and ah.
no.
And I thought, I can't do that.
Yes,
I'm not that kind of a person.
right.
Never mind. It's not so much as the skills, and I'm just not that kind of a person. I don't have the tech skills to do all of this stuff. And then I came across actually a British coach
Mhm.
who is beyond her natural. I mean, she has done her live straight out of the shower in her bathrobe with her hair wet. She's
That's amazing. I
she's
love
done
it.
them out in the countryside with playing with her kids. And then she recently
But that's so
had a
relatable.
baby, and she's done live breastfeeding, and very discreetly done. But she's lying in bed breastfeeding, doing her life.
But that's amazing, isn't it?
And
You got
I
to
love her
really
because
relatable. Yes.
she
Yes.
set me free. As
Yes.
I suddenly thought, you don't have to be perfect.
No, no, no. We,
You
we,
can
we get in, I think we connect with the humanness of other person rather than, and I think when you compare yourself, I need to be perfect, I need to be awesome, I need to look, and I saw somebody, without naming anyone, like, they had big lips and big lashes, and I'm looking at it, oh my God, okay, and I can't do this. And I was like, you be you, because people are going to connect. If I try and put up a mask, then people will struggle to find where Ruchi is, who I can connect with. Whereas when you are you, that's when people like, oh, that's my person. It might be 1 out of 10, it might be 1 out of 50, but then you're making it easy for them to find you, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And anything else, any person.
Just to say, yeah, so that I'm now working with helping people with, specifically with video,
Mhm.
and through that to become more relaxed around who they really are. It's not so much video skills, but so it's what I call becoming video comfortable.
Mhm.
When you can you get over the first technical issues of actually being visible, and
Mhm.
then you learn to just be yourself and to connect with that passion, that heart dream. Because once you connect with that, your listeners probably even know when they start talking about something that's very important to them, they
Mhm.
forget who they're talking to, whether they're on video or live. That it just spills out of you.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And
Because that's the
so,
thing, isn't it? That's coming out.
yeah,
Now you're
yeah.
not worried about, am I doing it right? Is it
Mhm.
perfect?
Yeah, on my lips showing this or that, or um,
True. So
whether
true.
you like the shape of your nose or the color of your hair or whatever it is, doesn't matter
No,
anymore.
no, no,
So
no.
that's what I'm helping people to get to,
Yes.
that level where they can be relaxed, because as you say, that's when people relate to you,
Yeah.
not when you're the perfect person doing everything properly.
No.
They relate to you when you're actually imperfect, but you're
Yes.
passionate
Yes.
about what you're doing.
Yes. That's amazing. Amazing. I love that. I love how our conversation waved into coming to authenticity, because yeah, authenticity lights me up. And I'm pretty sure it's lighting up all our viewers as well. So, Marion, the amazing transformation mindset coach that you are, if our viewers want to get in touch with you, want to have breakthrough EFT, matrix imprinting sessions with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Through LinkedIn, sending me a message on LinkedIn, or through my email,
Mm-hmm.
the direct email.
Sure, 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 sure. Amazing. So I'm going to share the email now. So it's Marion, Marion, at Marion Nixon. So Nixon.co.za. Yeah. So Marion at marionnixon.co.za. And of course, you can get in touch with Marion via LinkedIn, and she'll be happy to respond to your questions and get going to work with you to provide transformational results. Right. It was my pleasure and my honor to have you, Marion. And yeah, it's been so lovely, amazing, and awesome to connect with you.
I love talking to you.
Same here. Yeah, literally, it was such a brilliant start to my day. I wish you a pleasant day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's been really great to be here.
Wonderful. Take good care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.